For now, we're going to talk about Alarak. Alarak, for all intents and purposes, is a mage slash melee assassin. Okay, you have to treat Alarak as if he's a little bit of both. The reason I say that is because a lot of his damage does come by way of abilities. His sadism means he does more damage. His ability damage and self-healing are increased by 100% against enemy heroes. Takedowns increase sadism by 3% up to 30%. Sadism gained from takedowns is lost on death, so it's important to stay alive. The reason I say he's a mage is because if you're going like Q-build Vala and like another mage, you're basically adding a third mage, meaning that if Vala misses her shots and you miss your combo, it's going to be a rough game because you're probably going to lose that fight because you're basing things on cooldowns. So the normal combo, of course, is your W into your Q, and then you can E. Remember, your E does do that bonus in the middle, an additional 100% damage between enemies, between Alarak and the target. So you're trying to kill that person. They're running to their fort. E the wall, not the hero. That way it catches them in there. It's a little bit harder, so you have to learn angles and things like that. So talents. Now, there's going to be some debate about this because there's two schools of thought here. And I'm going to give you mine because I actually really like this. It's the most successful one that I had. First off, E-build is dead. It's been dead for a long time. Don't even think about it. Even when they've buffed it, it's still never going to go back to where it was before. It was too much. Just sit back and do nothing, Alarak. I actually really like Overwhelming Power. Ruthless Momentum at one point was really overbuffed. We need to go into here. Was really overbuffed and was really strong. Actually, we'll just switch to here. Because the health threshold was much lower. Now it's at 80%. Which means that you can play that poke style that you want. So you just stay back. If you hit your combo, good. If not, go to the next one. Your ability cooldowns are pretty low. So you have 12 seconds and 8 seconds. The cooldown reduction on this means that they're kind of in sync. They used to be super in sync, but they changed some things on the recharge time. I actually really like Overwhelming Power. Hitting an enemy hero with Discord Strike grants 40% attack speed and causes basic attacks to heal for 50% of the damage dealt. This is fantastic sustain. I actually normally stay away from auto attack talents when it comes to healing and all those different measures because they're so hard to pull off. One blind and you're screwed. Hitting these and staying on somebody is also really hard. But getting this does allow you to have that attack speed and sustain, and there's a lot that I love about this build. There's probably going to be some players that say Ruthless Momentum 100% of the time. I disagree, but you can try out both. Ruthless Momentum does mean you play more of a mage style, look for combos, and you're less active. One thing you have to know about Alarak, I believe his level 1 auto attack damage is like 180. It's really high. He does a lot of damage. It is ridiculously high, which means that you are healing for a lot and you should do more. I could be way off on this number because it's been a while, but it's really high and you should really consider auto attacking. So you get the attack speed, hitting your combo, attack speed plus the big heal. Very nice. Level 4. Which do you go here? Show of Force, really strong. If you're hitting your W and your Q, the E part is really easy. Heroes hit with 3 of Alarak's abilities within 2 seconds take an additional 61 damage, which isn't a ton, but you are creating a priority target by pulling them in, silencing them, and if you have more sadism, more damage, and then you're pressing E on them. So you've hit them with a full 3 ability combo, and you're doing bonus damage when you hit it. And because it's a little bit more bonus damage, that's nice. The other part is you get sadism up to a bonus 20%. That's where a lot of this comes in. Sadism gained from Show of Force is lost on death, same as your other sadism. I really like this because it gives you that opportunity to push levels in a more natural manner without having to worry about questing talents and all that. Technically, this is a questing talent that you lose on death. Chaos Reigns is okay. If I'm playing against a melee heavy team, I actually really like this because it's easier to finish and you get that big damage, and it makes it so that those heavy melee teams are taking a tremendous amount of damage. However, sadism does grant more ability damage, so you kind of have to take it or leave it. This plays into some other talents that we'll talk about, but hitting 3 W, Q, E, the same target, pretty easy to pull off. Level 7. Now there's 2 here that you need to consider. If I'm going against a standard 2 melee, 2 ranged, and a healer comp, Applied Force is almost necessary. If you ever want to pull that healer in, if you ever want to pull those ranged heroes in, you have to go this. Unless you're the 3rd melee and your team's going to go full YOLO, it's going to be hard. But even then, I'd probably still go this. If I'm going against more of a focus where I focus the melee much more than I focus the ranged, I'm going to look at Dissonance. Increase Discord Strike silence duration by 0.75 seconds. And if I'm going against the primarily auto attack team, silence doesn't really do much for me. This does well against melee healers as well, taking away that ability or reaching them. But if I'm going against the standard range comp, Applied Force is where it's at. Hindered Motion, almost never. Level 20, Counter-Strike is like a 95 to 98% pick rate at level 10. No, don't wait for level 20 unless you're a super Alarak god and you know what you're doing. And even then, Counter-Strike is really good. 30-second cooldown. Using this to become protected and unstoppable can be the difference between a lot of things. You have to take damage from an enemy hero. So predicting abilities, predicting combos, eating CC and knowing abilities are coming. This does require you to target where you're going, but this does do a lot of damage. When you have more and more sadism, this thing is scary strong and can be the difference between killing somebody or not. There's a lot of small tweaks with this. Knowing when to use this, whether as a self-cleanse and protect, whether as a killing blow, you can be at 100% health and get a combo off and somebody's running away, but then their ally, which is very common, is going to hit you no matter what with some random ability or AoE, or they're still auto-attacking. And all of a sudden, you've now killed that target that you couldn't reach before. There's a lot of tricks to this. We'll talk about Deadly Charge at level 20. Level 13, technically all of these are good. And technically Rite of Rakshir has the highest potential. However, the higher you go, the more difficult it's going to be to get this going, because it does require your team to kill the target that you have marked. And if you don't, they're marked for a long time. Which, going back to the auto attack build that I was talking about at level 1, getting 40% attack speed technically doesn't really matter here. This is just 20 auto attacks. Basic attacks against heroes increase sadism by 2%, stacking up to 40%. You lose all these on death, of course. This is the one I like most. So we're looking at 40% sadism here, an additional 20% sadism here, and whether you sacrifice 10 here or not. This one does not sacrifice sadism. This one does. I really like this one. Pure Malice, if you're really trolling or an ARAMs or you're playing with a Murky somewhere, Pure Malice can help. This does also go to 40%, but I think I'd rather rely on auto-attacking 20 times as opposed to my team dying 4 times and me not dying. My team's dying, I'm probably dying too. So I don't like Pure Malice as a result. Rite of Rakshir is really good. And if your team is just farming, sure. But I think Blade of the High Lord is always going to be consistent. There's no downside to this at all. There's downside to Pure Malice. There's downside to Rite of Rakshir. There's much higher upside with Rite of Rakshir, but Blade of the High Lord will always be good. You drop and lose all your sadism, and your team's starting to lose their lead, and Rite of Rakshir is not as easy to get anymore. Blade of the High Lord will always be good. Level 16. Lethal Onslaught. Hitting an enemy hero with Discord Strike grants 50% of sadism's damage bonus to Alarak's basic attacks for 4 seconds. So if I've been hitting this and I've been getting my level 13 procs and I'm getting free sadism, and I come here and now I have the sadism bonus, which I'm not having to use abilities or kills or any of the deaths to get those stacks. Now this looks really good. Basic attacks against heroes refresh this duration. And if we consider the level 1, basic attacks heal for part of it. Remember, this is the bonus damage from the sadism, so it's a little different, but this does help a lot. Lightning Barrage is also really good, but here's another one, Mocking Strikes. This one is also really good. Basic attacks against enemy heroes reduce the cooldown of my basic abilities by 1.5 seconds. If I'm going against a heavy CC team and they have a lot of blinds, or it's a May and a Cassia, this probably is going to be very hard to pull off, and I'll start looking at some other options. But Mocking Strikes is probably my go-to. It's doubled versus heroes that are stunned, silenced, slowed, or rooted. Considering that you can silence heroes and get a couple of autos off, and we consider this as a 12-second cooldown and an 8-second cooldown, Had we gone Mocking Strikes and Dissonance, for example, we're now looking at a very long silence of 2 seconds, which means I can get multiple autos out to now have 3 to maybe 4.5 second cooldown reduction in optimal situations. 1.5 minimum, 3 seconds on average. And those look really good. If I have anybody on my team with stuns, slows, hello, basically every tank in the game, things look pretty good in general. And I really like Mocking Strikes to go and complement all of this. Lethal Onslaught can be really good in the right situation. If you're going against a heavy melee comp, this can work. Lightning Barrage is just if there's no other options and you need to just have something that's going to work. Level 20. Now, technically, all of these can be really good in the right situation. I like Deadly Charge because there is really no downside to this at level 20. It can be interrupted, but once you're level 20 and you've been stacking, you can Deadly Charge into a team and you still have your Counter Strike. You can initiate, you can disengage, you can do a lot of things. Much harder to disengage, but this does give you an extra tool to do damage in a fight or initiate. Last Laugh and Hasty Bargain are all really tricky. Now, if you are an Alarak player, you treat this similarly to the same way you would with an ETC level 20. I don't have to pick my level 20. There's nothing that says I need to pick my level 20 right away. If I am in a game-winning or game-losing situation, I can then pick Last Laugh and get out of there. Activate to teleport to the chosen location and remove all roots, slows, and dot effects. And if I fail to hit enemy heroes 3 times with basic abilities within 4 seconds using Last Laugh, my health is reduced to 1, which means that I can use this to do some pretty crazy stuff, or I can use this to live with 1 health. You know? So it's a little tricky. This is normally used on the defensive end. So if things are going bad, I Last Laugh and I'm out. I'm out. There's nothing that's going to be there to kill me. Hasty Bargain, much trickier. Activate to permanently reduce Alarak sadism by 4% and reset the cooldowns of all the... Again, this is like creating major highlight clips and you're an Alarak god, which is why I don't normally recommend these. If you're watching a video to learn how to play Alarak, these are the last things that you want to do when learning Alarak, is to learn a whole different way to play Alarak while learning to play Alarak. That's not easy. Deadly Charge, pretty safe. Counter Strike is just going to keep you alive a lot longer throughout the game and do a lot more than Deadly Charge could. Counter Strike, you can use this, and if you get creative with this, you can almost guarantee the damage. And if not, it's a 30-second cooldown, so it's really short to be able to be protected, unstoppable. And this is a no-brainer if I'm going against Pyroblast or anything like that. It's silly for anything else. So that's Alarak. Alarak in general, he's not really great in the solo lane, but he's not terrible in the solo lane if that solo lane is a map that requires less focus on the solo lane. Think Dragonshire, think Braxis. Those are really bad maps for Alarak, although there are some matchups where it is okay. But generally speaking, it's pretty bad. Alarak, in my opinion, fits much better into a 4-man comp, and a lot of people will agree with that. But the thing about that is that I need to make sure I have some setup. I want to follow up, but I can initiate. I don't need people to set everything up for me as an Alarak because my combo does that. But if I'm playing with a Leoric in the solo lane, my damage numbers probably aren't going to be very high from the bruiser roll. That means more emphasis on me doing damage. And remember, I am essentially a mage. We go back to that original thought. So if we play Leo, Alarak, and Jaina, we're either smashing people or we're not killing a thing. And when you're not killing a thing as Alarak, it's a tough game because you are not getting the value that you thought you would. So you have to be careful where you draft it. If I'm picking it up with a Thrall or another bruiser / melee assassin that does do well in the solo lane, think Kira, for example, Thrall. There's a lot of heroes that we would consider that do well in that from the bruiser perspective. Hogger, Diva, Gaslo, all of a sudden things look a lot better because those now help complement me and give that damage in case I don't have that regular consistency. And that's where Alarak tends to suffer, is when you draft him early and your team doesn't draft around it or it doesn't fit into your comp. And that does take a little bit to figure out where it's at. A good Alarak player, and you might think you are, can probably go out there, combo everybody, and dominate a game. But the minute you die one time and lose that sadism, it's going to be a lot tougher to come back. So you have to be very careful with when and how you play Alarak. You're all in or you're all out. And when you lose that sadism, let's say you're up 16-14 and you die, and that team is now fighting you 16-17, 16-18, and you still have the advantage, all that sadism gone, makes those fights a lot harder. Trust me on this one. So always be careful, try and stay alive, get those combos, play safe, but also understand that Alarak's auto attack damage is really good and you can be proactive. Just don't be over aggressive. You're not an all-in dive to the back of the line. A few tricks with Alarak that you have to know is that you can alt W, alt telekinesis, and that will self-move you. The thing about that is it moves you in the direction that you are facing. So if I need to go here and my character's facing that way, and I'm right-clicking this way, but my character is not turned around, I will move that way. Make sure that if you're going somewhere, you can alt W to get that fast mobility. This is how higher level Alaraks make sure that they don't die. They make sure that they have their telekinesis at the right time. They get combos. And if they don't hard commit. They don't have to. It's okay to auto attack a tank, but I don't have to always auto attack a tank. But if I do get in that situation, my cooldown is there. I make sure I'm facing the other direction. I alt W and I automatically telekinesis myself the direction that I'm facing. That's a trick that I think is definitely important to learn. It's a little bit, if you're not as familiar with Alarak and that concept, it's probably going to feel a little foreign, but it's quite easy once you just think about it in the middle of a fight. You'll find yourself in the middle of your fight and you're like, I can't get out of here. I have no mobility. And then you're like, wait a minute, if I alt W while running away, things look a lot better. So there are some tricks with that. But that's Alarak in a nutshell. Very all in, very high risk. There's a reason you don't see this hero. He's a high risk, high reward hero. And if it's a high risk, it also has a very low floor in terms of what he brings to the table. So be careful with learning Alarak, and that's Alarak in a nutshell.